she had been hearing a car alarm all day on the property, and when she got home, he had the car keys and was crouched in the apartment setting off the car alarm because he had hallucinated people sitting in his car, and he was convinced they were trying to steal it.
Whoa.
And so we kind of laughed about it at the time because we knew the hallucinations would come eventually, but they were supposed to be innocent, like babies and kids and nothing that's really scary.
Why do you say they were supposed to be innocent? That's the typical...
That's the progression. Is the neurologist had said with Parkinson's, eventually he'll start to see babies and kids and like sometimes pets. He hallucinated my childhood dog all the time.
Okay. So he did have the cute ones.
He did have the cute ones.
But also the scary ones where there's random people in your car.
Yeah, and they would just watch him, and he was convinced that they were going to steal the car.
All right. Well, we are back with our friend Haley. And I say back because we actually recorded an episode with you many moons ago.
8 years ago.
Nice to be back, guys.
How many moons is that, Bri?
42.
All right. We'll get that fact checked and put it on the screen if you got it.
I'm so sorry, it's going to be wrong.
Yeah, definitely, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely wrong.
Because there's a new moon every month, which means
420.
There's a new moon and a full moon every month.
7 times.
How many moons ago was
12.
7 years?
Okay, so there's 86.
24 times
86 moons.
What a
158.
What a fucking stupid way to start this episode. Though I kind of love it, because, and the reason okay, Brian.
No, he wasn't.
What was the first one he said?
He said 42.
Yeah, and then did you
158.
Say? All right, well, 84. So
I said 86.
We'll meet you in the middle.
Hey.
Price is Right rules, I busted.
A nice, silly way to start this off, because I feel like this conversation with you, Haley, is going to be, every once in a while we do an episode where, like, it's not full of laughs, and it's full of the opposite of laughs. Cries. And I feel like this episode might be one of those more heavy episodes.
And also, just to say, if you're listening right now and that makes you feel like you want to turn this episode off, I encourage you to not, and just to kind of go to this place with us.
Yeah, because if you do turn it off, you're a piece of shit. So the reason why it's going to be heavy is because we're talking to you this week not about your SVT, supraventricular tachycardia.
So proud of you.
Oh, that was I almost messed it up. Which is what we talked about back in 2017. But today we're going to be talking about grief, because you have recently experienced a pretty close death in the family. Your father died from Lewy Body Dementia. So I want to start off with this question. You describe Lewy Body Dementia as non-linear, which can give you these like brief, beautiful moments of clarity with the person that you love, right before they're gone. Again, what's it like to get your dad back for 5 minutes only to just have the disease kind of like snatch him away from you moments later?
I love that question because the periods of lucidity were actually longer. And so I don't think there's any form of dementia or Alzheimer's, because I feel like most of us have probably experienced it peripherally, at least with someone in our families or a friend or a, acquaintance. But Lewy body dementia is nonlinear because there are days where the progression is really bad, and then there are days where the progression will actually trick people into thinking that the person is better not declining as fast as they initially thought. So it can be confusing to kind of like create a path of treatment, because you can't, at least with, I'll say regular Alzheimer's or, one of the many, I think there are over 200 forms of dementia. Don't quote me on that, but there's quite a few different types of dementia. It's more of like a steady progression. You know that you're going down the slope, but for him, some days it was like he would dive off a cliff and then the next day he'd be back on the ledge again.
Wow.
What are the, I think I'm most familiar. I'm only really familiar with Lewy body in name as a form of dementia. Like I've heard of it. I know we've had a lot of conversations around like Alzheimer's, and I know that Parkinson's is a form of dementia as well, which obviously primarily or starts primarily in the body and then progresses into the mind like later. So like what are some of the, and this can be obviously very specific to your dad, but like what are some of like the sort of like hallmarks of Lewy body
So I'm glad you said that. Parkinson's starts in the body and then moves to the brain. Lewy body starts in the brain and then moves to the body. And so that was kind of the thing that we missed, which we can get into, because he was a perfect storm of a misdiagnosis. It happened during COVID, and they live in rural Cape Breton, and so his access to a neurologist here in Halifax, with travel being limited to the county that they lived in, was super limited. And so he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and that's what he was being treated for. And then when we saw the neurologist, I think it was 3 years later, none of the symptoms she had initially diagnosed him with matched the trajectory of Parkinson's. But for him, it was hallucinations. So it started in the brain. They had seen a tremor in him, and he had kind of like the blood pressure issues that are pretty common in Parkinson's. And he was a musician, and Parkinson's affects your voice.
Right.
And so his tolerance for things like cold, which I don't know, I mean, I'm sure you guys know this, you spend enough time on stage, but like backstage in the green room, they keep it quite cold. And then you go out on stage, his fingers would get frozen backstage.
Not to mention fucking Cape Breton.
Yeah, exactly. The weather was not kind.
For those of you who aren't familiar, it's
not Halifax.
It's fucking windy and it's cold.
Yeah.
We get, if it's a snowy day here, it's a goddamn fucking blizzard up there.
Yeah, you bet.
I do want to say before you jump in there, Brian, just about the common types of dementia. So yeah, you were right that there's over 100 with estimates sometimes reaching around 200 types of dementia, and they are broadly categorized into common forms like Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia.
Yeah.
And other types such as Lewy body dementia and frontotemporal dementia. So Alzheimer's disease is the most common type, primarily affecting memory, thinking, and behavior. Vascular dementia is caused by reduced blood flow to the brain, often due to strokes or high blood pressure.
Yeah.
Dementia with Lewy bodies is an umbrella term for several types of dementia, including Parkinson's disease dementia. And then frontotemporal dementia, FTD. This group of dementias affects the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain.
So when we think of, I'm just going to broadly group them into memory-eating diseases, we think of it kind of like a black hole where memory kind of gets pulled away slowly. Lewy body is kind of like a trickster because it's a buildup of protein on the brain that, I mean, it can land anywhere in the brain, it can land everywhere in the brain, and it kind of mimics the symptoms as far as we saw, but that's why you get that crazy fluctuation in symptoms.
So in the way that, like, in the famous Heritage Minute commercial, the I smell burnt toast.
Dr. Penfield.
So like the protein is sort of like pressing on or like building up in certain areas.
Up. Yeah, exactly.
That just like ends up either stopping the brain from functioning in certain areas, like the burnt toast thing. Like, I mean, specifically with the burnt toast thing, when they pressed on that, they were like, oh, this is where it is. But like with the protein buildup, is it only limiting the brain function in those areas where the protein is building up more?
As far as I understand, and that's, I mean, I feel like it's common knowledge now, but that's what Robin Williams passed away from, was Lewy body dementia. But for Dad, it kind of happened similarly, where it built up, we know, on the centers of his brain that should have been controlling his anxiety. Because for somebody who never experienced anxiety and was a performer for over 40 years, he suddenly couldn't leave the house.
When you said that, they initially diagnosed him or thought it was Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Is that like a missed diagnosis in the sense that you mentioned like Parkinson's and Lewy body are like sort of reversed? So if it started in the brain and moved to the body, then is that like Parkinson's basically catching it late?
Yeah, they had kind of followed the tremor in his hand, and he was having some muscle issues, and so they thought because he was having physical symptoms first in a really mild way, they felt confident diagnosing him with Parkinson's. And then the cognitive stuff hit really fast and hard. He and my mom lived in Bedeck in Cape Breton for the summertime. Cape Breton's a very seasonal place for work, and it was kind of a central location for him to go to his gigs. So my mom worked on site at a hotel, and they had a little apartment set up. And so he would be home during the day, kind of independently making her lunch and going to visit her for coffee and doing his thing. He was also a photographer. He really liked taking pictures.
Which is what you do.
Which is what I do. I'm not going to say that I got him back to photography, but I'll take credit. I did. So there was one afternoon, my partner went home to meet my folks in August, and this is how fast the decline happened. I just like to give this for context because it still feels a little surreal to me. It was August of 2021. We went home. We stayed with them. He played guitar, and he and I sang for my partner, and he drove my then new car. And then in September, my mom called and said she was kind of laughing because in hindsight, you think about it differently. But she had been hearing a car alarm all day on the property. And when she got home, he had the car keys and was crouched in the apartment setting off the car alarm because he had hallucinated people sitting in his car and he was convinced they were trying to steal it.
Whoa.
And so we kind of laughed about it at the time because we knew the hallucinations would come eventually, but they were supposed to be innocent, like babies and kids and nothing that's really scary for the person seeing them.
What? Why? Like, why do you say they were supposed to be innocent? That's the typical.
That's the progression. Is the neurologist had said with Parkinson's, eventually he'll start to see babies and kids and like sometimes pets.
Oh wow!
Is a super common hallucination.
Huh.
Interesting yeah.
It does sound fun.
He hallucinated my childhood dog all the time.
Okay. So he did have the cute ones.
He did have the cute ones.
But also the scary ones where there's random people in your car.
Yeah, and they would just watch him, and he was convinced that they were going to steal the car. And so he, unbeknownst to her, had been setting off this car alarm all day and scaring the guests on the hotel property, and we kind of laughed about it.
Right.
And then in hindsight, by October, they had moved home. By November, she knew they weren't going back next year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's,
3 months.
That like, that's one of the things I find so fascinating and also like hard about dementia in general is the, so like my grandfather has dementia.
Okay.
My grandmother, his wife, who she died from dementia.
Wow.
And I remember like when Nan was in the thick of it, I would like be on a call with her or I would like see her in person. And I really struggled because like everybody around me were finding the humor that existed in her confusion and objectively, like it was funny. Like there's, I think I don't fault anyone for like laughing at Nan thinking that I'm like, some young suitor that she like is attracted. Like that's funny. But I found, and it's kind of ironic. Like I found it to be really hard. I did not find it easy to find the levity there. Yeah. Because it's so not that person. And it was like, it really crushed me to see the confusion, even though I can also see that like, a way to deal with that is to like to be able to laugh at it. And I think the people that were laughing were like the folks that were around Nan all the time. So it sort of become normalized for them.
And they see the, sure. Like comparatively,
yes,
that might be,
whereas like that
might be a very funny experience versus some of the more like scary, very sad moments.
And also I haven't seen Nan in this state. And so it's like, I haven't like been acclimatized to it. But
and you're probably like, I mean, I would make the assumption that this is fairly true for you, Haley, and let me know if I'm wrong. And I would assume that for most people, it's like with dementia, there's like, it can be such a drawn out, like multi-year experience that like the grief starts like long before someone passes away.
I love that take. And you're absolutely right. Like, this is where I'm going to cry. Jeremy, I'm warning you. You pre-grieve somebody. Like you're preparing for their loss while they're still alive. And because of how his brain progressed, I saw him smile for the last time because his muscles had weakened so much that he couldn't hold his face up anymore. And I watched him tune his guitar. And so it creates like this beautiful nuance around loss where you're like, if all of us had the gift of knowing you're seeing somebody do something for the last time, you're extra present with it. And so getting to see him do those things and know that it was going to be the last time was gorgeous. And I photographed a lot of it. Like I photographed his hands while he still had control over them. And I photographed conversations with him where I knew we weren't going to be able to talk in the way that we were anymore. And it's not as potent as video. I still look back and wish that I was a videographer. But yeah, I have this like really gorgeous photo of the last time he and my mom walked to the shore, which is something they did every day when they were alive together. And it's one of my favorite photos I've ever taken. It's nothing special, but it's so powerful to be able to like pre-grieve somebody.
I mean,
it doesn't change anything, but
I have oddly moments that I think are probably fairly similar, like with my daughters in the way that like they change so rapidly.
Yeah. And
like you love them in this state and you know that they won't stay that way.
Oh.
And so you're like,
unless you inject them or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Unless we go through some highly experimental treatments. And there's so many things that, especially my 3-year-old who like when she started to speak a lot.
Yeah.
And they say things in these weird ways, and you know that they'll learn that that's not how you say that.
Yeah.
But they say it in such a cute way that you're like, I don't want that to change, although I know it will. And you're not, you can kind of sense that you're like getting to the place where, that might be the last time they ever say like, we haven't done that in a couple whiles. And you're like, oh, I know that they're going to start saying we haven't done that in a while, and they won't say it in that weird, strange way. And that's like, it's beautiful and also very sad.
And there's also this future grief because when I met my partner and became a step-parent, my dad never got to see me be a parent.
Mm.
And this is the only way I'm going to be in a kid's orbit in that way. And just like every time I get on stage now without him, I think about how much my stepdaughter would have loved getting to see us on stage together and how he would have been at her dance competitions wearing a shirt with her face on it. Like, you miss out on all the future stuff too. And for being like, she met him when she was 8 all the way through 12. She handled the loss with a remarkable amount of grace for her age. She actually had favorite home care workers towards the end, and she'd get up out of bed at 7 o'clock to go chat with them. But yeah, my partner and I had like incited a lot of really cool conversations around the everyday grief because we think of it in such a vacuum where it's like grief is just loss.
Yeah.
But grief is everything around loss.
And the grief that you're talking about is, I mean, did you find that there's, and maybe this is sort of what you're talking about, but I feel like there's also, it's like, it's not like 1 or 2 moments of grief. It's like the grief stages are like, there's chapters of the grief, and you're going through each chapter with each sort of chapter of the progression of the disease. So it's like you're slowly losing more and more and more, and so you're having to like re-grieve over and over and over. It's not like I grieved that one loss where he changed, and then I grieved him when he died. Yeah. I'm assuming it was like, oh no, I was just constantly going through a new state of grief
for years. And I mean, because of the way that his condition happened and because he was misdiagnosed with Parkinson's, my mom had gotten sick with cancer around like the 2-week mark of when he'd gotten diagnosed with Parkinson's. And so all the focus went to her and her more, I would say, like immediate condition. And when people would give them condolences, because they were very well known and loved in their town, they both still are, people would offer him condolences and he'd be like, it's just Parkinson's. I'm going to live 20 more years. Mm-hmm. And in hindsight, that's like a pretty gut-wrenching thing because the way that we lost him, and we didn't know until we really knew, he only had about 5 years from the time he was diagnosed. Oh, so it changed everything.
One thing that I wanted to say, you had mentioned it earlier, but the Robin Williams having Lewy Body Dementia. And although Robin Williams didn't succumb to the dementia, like that's not, I mean, ultimately, I think that is what killed him, but it wasn't in the way that it was the fact that he had that, knew it was going to change him, and so he decided to take his own life.
Yeah.
There's a documentary for anybody who is not familiar with Lewy Body Dementia, or is like a fan of Robin Williams. It's called Robin's Wish, and the documentary is the main subject of the documentary is his wife. She's the one that's sort of guiding you through the story, and it's unbelievably good.
Yeah.
And it really does, it does a really fantastic job of diving into Lewy body dementia and kind of digging into like what is at the heart of that illness. So just don't stop listening to this and then just watch it after.
I really wanted to ask to better understand like what the moments of lucidity are like versus the being in the throes of the illness. Like do you talk about it with your dad? Did he understand in those moments that he was having these like gaps? Like what?
No, his lucidity, because he was never told what was happening to him. And again, this was a decision that was determined not just by a family member trying to protect their own peace and his peace. The neurologist agreed based on his criteria of how anxious he was. Any moment of knowing what was happening to him would have been nothing short of cruel.
Mm-hmm.
But his moments of lucidity came, like we knew he was having one because he would start apologizing, or he would start having like these moments of reflection on things that he had done throughout his life and having these like big hard conversations that you would expect someone to have if they knew they were dying, like regrets or things that he wished he'd said. That was pretty early on, like I'm going to say year 3 of the 4 that we had with him, where we kind of had some concept of what was going on. But there were also lots of times he would tell my mom, like, I don't think I'm going to get better from this, which for her was heartbreaking because it was like, getting down to 5 minutes of having him aware. But his awareness and how it would fluctuate pretty unpredictably also meant that she couldn't have just anybody around, because if people were talking about what was happening with him or talking about the disease, and he happened to be in a moment of awareness, which we were never really sure,
right,
it could have like blown it all for them.
That provides like a unique challenge of, like having to almost like be secretive when you're not, like that's not what you're doing, but did it feel at times like you were like, oh fuck, we have to
sure.
like go to this other room to have this conversation?
Yeah, and the people that took care of him, like my aunt and my uncle and countless other family friends who were there for the right reasons. And I don't want to say that anybody wouldn't have been, but because he was such a beloved figure in the community, Mom was really protective over his dignity, which I think is a very special thing to be able to say. But yeah, it was hard in the ways that I would start taking calls from the neurologist, because if Mom was on the phone too long, he would start to get paranoid. And so I was in Halifax taking calls, and then she would create the system where she would call me back when he was napping, and she'd be able to go out of the house and watch him through the door to make sure he wasn't awake. And then I would fill her in on everything the neurologist had said. She would come back at me with questions, and we'd do it all again the next day.
Sorry, I might have missed it because I'm simultaneously also taking like editorial notes, so I might I check out every once in a while. Usually I'm good at doing that and listening. It's like my ADHD is seems to be fucking lacking today. What's behind the choice to avoid openly speaking about the progression or the illness in case he hears it? Like, is it to save his, like, what's the choice behind that? And do you think that was the right choice? Because I feel like a big part of what we talk about on the show is like open communication and talking openly about like what's going on, especially when it comes to like, let's say, like a parent who, like in my case, a parent with a child, and I know this is different, but like a parent with a child who's sick.
Yeah.
Like keeping the facts of that illness away from that kid can be like detrimental. So like what was behind that? And do you think that was the like right call?
I'm glad that you're asking such a heavy and hard hitting question, because, because of what happened to my dad, my partner and I have had lots of conversations about what would we do if we were in that case.
Yeah.
And I'm team full medical autonomy.
Sure.
And tell me the truth. And so are they. And it wasn't an easy decision, and it may not have been the right one, but it was something that we kind of evaluated with his neurologist, who knew his particular levels of anxiety and what anxiety would do to him.
I see. Okay.
And how much anxiety he had around conditions like Alzheimer's. His father passed away from Alzheimer's.
Okay.
And Dad watched him. And he always said if he ever had Alzheimer's, he didn't want to know. And so that's kind of the information we were going based off of.
So like if like he only has these, or I guess in the later stages, like if he only has these like small windows,
yeah,
maybe best not to have them filled with panic and fear.
Exactly. And so he was on a number of medications for anxiety. Just they thought that they would help. They didn't. Spoiler. But the things, my mom kind of really attuned to him because his communication and his ability to communicate also changed a lot. But she started seeing how much routine benefited him and movement would benefit him. And so she kind of got him into this place with help from all the people that were with her in like, he would wake up at a certain time and he would do these things that would exercise the cognitive parts of his brain that he had remaining. And he would do these physical exercises and then they would walk at the same time. And so I think when she saw what happened to the disruption in his routine, whether it was mental or physical, it was devastating and it would take them weeks to get back on track. And because of that, I do think it was the right call for him. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's the right call for everybody.
Sure.
But having seen what I saw of him,
it made sense.
We probably would have lost him faster.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious though, because you mentioned when you and your partner talked about it, that you would make different decisions. Do you mean specifically for yourselves?
Yes.
Because it does sound like, you know, when you explained it, that this specific type of Lewy body was really manifesting in your dad's anxiety and you know, those moments not being filled with that anxiousness sounds like a very fair assessment of it. And so I was just curious, like you mean specifically like if you were in that position you would want to know, but it still feels like the right decision for your dad.
I think it was the right decision for dad. For me, I think, and this is kind of what I've learned from him dying the most, is that I'm trying to be less afraid of the things that are inevitable and hard, and grief is one of them. And so he didn't have the same gift of getting comfortable with his vulnerability before he died. It was one thing, and I'm sure like when you live your life on stage, you can relate. There's a lot of surface level relationships, and it's not to say that those aren't potent relationships, but you're not getting to know people on a one-on-one basis, and you're not necessarily being outwardly vulnerable with people. You know, he did that through music. He wrote a lot of songs.
Artistically
vulnerable. But I think it was probably his worst nightmare to be sick in front of people.
I'd love to talk about like the symptoms of Lewy body dementia and specifically like the symptoms your dad was facing. One thing I know through this podcast and through like, you know, my partner who's a nurse, I've heard a lot about like how to deal with someone who is hallucinating or someone who is in like a delusional state due to whatever it is, whether it's like medically induced or it's due to something like Alzheimer's. And I've been told like, oh yeah, like if they are, you know, having some sort of delusion, you're not supposed to like try to talk them out of it. You're supposed to like almost like make believe, like play along with it. As it pertains to the hallucinations, like what did that look like? Like what did those look like outside of the ones you've already expressed? And like, how did you guys navigate that? And then also sundowning, if that's a thing, and like what is sundowning and what did that look like in your guys' case?
So it was interesting. I was talking to my mom just to make sure that, you know, there were parts of this that she explicitly wanted shared. And one of the things she mentioned early on was the doctors had her doing dementia tests at home. And one of those things is you draw a clock and then you draw a cube.
Right.
And you have to remember 3 words or 5 words.
Yeah.
And she was doing those with my dad in the morning and he was passing them all with flying colors. And she said, you know, in hindsight, I should have been getting him to do them in the evening because that's when his cognition would start to go. And that's sundowning.
Okay.
And so there was a false sense of there's no way this is dementia because look, he can do all of these things. But there is something, I'm not sure how proven it's been. It's certainly well documented.
That symptoms are intensified later in the day.
In the day, yeah. So around, for him, and it varied, like it would get earlier and earlier the sicker he got. But for him, it started somewhere around 5 or 6. He wouldn't be able to sit still they used to sit down and, you know, like any couple does in rural Cape Breton, watch a TV show together. And
Coronation Street or some shit.
Yeah.
Totally.
Antiques Roadshow usually. I'm an Antiques
Something
Roadshow
with
kid.
dazzling swipes.
Yeah. Whatever you're picturing, you are absolutely correct. But he would start getting up and wandering around the house like he had some kind of invisible itinerary. He would be digging in cupboards. He would be pulling stuff off walls. He would be talking to people. We did go through a really scary period where he started hallucinating a second version of my mom.
Whoa.
We called her Rodina 2 because I know it sounds like something straight out of a horror movie, and it was for a while.
Like The Sixth Sense.
Like The Sixth Sense, which ironically is playing in the background.
That's right. It was the only movie on the shelf that I was like, this feels dementia-like.
Yeah, that's the right one. The second version of my mom that he would hallucinate, and we weren't really sure who he was seeing at what time.
Was she hotter?
No.
Sorry.
I love
I'm so
it.
sorry. I'm so sorry
I can't
to
expect
Rodina 1.
any less Rodina 1. We apologize.
We know you're hotter.
Yeah, we
Rodina
know.
1. We all know it.
I guess she was kind of like bossy and mean to him is how he would describe it. And so we would
Rodina
get
2.
really angry at Rodina 2.
Yeah.
And we started having family stay around the clock because if he got angry
confused.
or irritated enough and tried to distinguish between the two of them, we were pretty worried for mom's safety for
That's
a little
so
while
fascinating
there.
about the Sundowning thing.
Yeah,
Like,
so-
I wonder if it's is sleep like giving you a
So
boost, or what is going on
Before
there?
we go into Sundowning, that's one of the first like hallmark recorded symptoms of Lewy body dementia is REM, like sleep disorders.
Yeah.
And again, hindsight being 2020, Dad started having sleep disorders, which we blamed on his musician lifestyle. He was playing the bars
course.
until 3 a.m. and coming home, sleeping from 7 to 12, getting up, going to do shows again.
Mhm.
And he would act out all of his dreams.
Yeah, so I saw that earlier. Common symptoms of Lewy body dementia. So you have the cognitive, which you've been talking about, fluctuating alertness, difficulty focusing, attention issues, visual hallucinations, movement, similar to Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Larry has a lot of like acting out his dreams.
Yeah, behavioral. So you have mood changes, delusions, anxiety, sleep, acting out dreams. REM sleep behavior disorder is a common symptom. And then autonomic symptoms like problems with autonomic bodily functions like blood pressure, digestion, and bowel and bladder control.
When you think about like if you're losing like the ability to sleep well, like just like how much of a snowball effect that is on like everything.
And that was the biggest fight in our lives at that point. And I say our lives, I was in Halifax for a lot of this.
Yeah.
And family were kind of with him around the clock, and I would get home as much as I could. But sleep was such a big thing. Like our house would shut down at 7 o'clock at night, and Mom would not risk disrupting his sleep at all. And, you know, she was trying to make sure that he was getting sleep. But when you're acting out your dreams like that or flailing, or it's, you just know that you're not getting what you should be for a brain that's already deprived of what it needs.
And it's interesting, like as we get older, and like we're all in our 30s, right?
Yes.
So like the difference between how you viewed sleep when you were younger, when you were in your your early 20s, versus how
different.
you now, if you didn't, you could sleep 8 hours and say, I never woke up, but if you didn't sleep
Especially
well.
if you get a fucking watch that tells you.
And it's so obvious.
And rubs it in your face.
I
just want to go through Sundowning here. So Sundowning is increased confusion, agitation, anxiety, and other behavioral changes that occur in the late afternoon and evening with people with dementia. It's a symptom of dementia, not a disease itself, and may involve disorientation, mood swings, pacing, hallucinations. The exact cause isn't fully understood, but it may involve disrupted circadian rhythms, environmental factors, and changes in the brain related to the disease itself. Symptoms include cognitive changes, behavioral changes, emotional changes, sensory changes. And so why it happens: circadian rhythm disruption. The internal body clock can become disrupted by the disease, making it hard to distinguish between night and day. Brain changes. The progression of dementia can lead to changes in brain regions that control wakefulness and sleep, and there may be a decreased melatonin production. Environmental factors such as darkness and the changing light of day can trigger confusion and distress, especially in people with impaired vision. And then tiredness. So like being overly tired can just exacerbate all of those symptoms.
That's a big one that I know. So both of my grandparents have dementia. They live in a long-term care home. And when we go up to visit them, sometimes we'll take them out for lunch.
Yeah.
And in the morning before lunch, they're like, talking about the past. It's a totally normal conversation. It oftentimes goes like in circles after 30 minutes.
Yeah.
We'll go out for lunch. It seems normal. And like clockwork, as soon as we get back, it's like the tank is empty and the dementia's in full blast. And I used to, until like now, really just thought of it as, like you have a fuel tank in your brain and you charge it up at night, and in the morning you wake up and you only have so much energy. And at the end of the day, or, depending on how quickly you burn through that energy, and, like they're used to being on their own a lot, watching TV during the day. They don't have a ton of visitors. And so when they get visitors, it's like this like intense stimulus that, is like just burning through that brain energy. And obviously this is very bro science-y, but like to me it just made sense. It was like, okay, as soon as we get to early afternoon, like that's sort of,
I mean, it's multifactorial, but like there's like the tiredness. Like, I mean, if you're ever around a kid who is like hours past when they usually go to sleep, you're like, oh, that's
a different kid.
You are not you. You are totally different.
Oh yeah. When I go to my sister's and watch like a WWE pay-per-view and it's like midnight Austin, I'm like, dude, you're nuts.
Dude, they're on drugs.
Yeah.
I really wanted to ask Haley about your experience, and you mentioned living in Halifax, having to make the drive back home. What were your emotions, and what was the experience like trying to think like, oh, like I got to get home this weekend, I got to do this. Like, how did you handle that, and what was it like?
Great question. You're one of the few to ask, which is why I started crying immediately. People were really understandably like hands-on with my mom and the people helping him. But I was up here in Halifax, like just having established a long-term partnership, just having become a step-parent. And it felt like a really painful tug of war. Mm-hmm. Like I missed one of Dad's last good Christmases because it was my first Christmas with my own family. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't be in two places at once. And so it was a lot to juggle the reality. And I've worked in outdoor retail management for going on 12 years. And the amount of times I would be standing in the store with somebody asking me about the waterproofness of a jacket, which I love to talk about on a good day. And the alarm bells in my head would be like, your dad is dying. Mm. Got to the point where we just kind of like gave in. We just packed up the car as often as we could, especially in the last year. We were home once a month and it never felt like enough. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the emotional tug of war of knowing how much we were missing and how much he would progress the next time we were home was awful. Mm-hmm. And it was 4 years of that.
Mm-hmm. And it also doesn't really like end in the sense that like, I imagine that you feel that way towards your mom now and like wanting to, or going, I don't know if your mom is still living in Cape Breton, but
I got to tell you, my mom has like had this beautiful turnaround on her life after being respectfully housebound with my dad for 4 years and really restricted in the things she could do.
With an evil twin at that.
With an evil twin named Rodina too.
That she can't even
who was not hotter.
Ugly Rodina.
Rodina too. She's living her life in ways that I don't even think she expected.
Yeah.
She does everything and anything she can. She was at Cavendish Beach Music Festival this year.
Nice.
That's awesome.
She wasn't a festival goer, had the opportunity when my dad was playing music. And yeah, she's just like kind of said to hell with it to everything. And I think that's also a silver lining to this.
I mean, it's like the ultimate bittersweet.
Yeah.
Like there's just this super drawn out period of your life being fully flipped upside down every single day, every moment. And then all of a sudden, not.
And then what? Yeah.
I know that like for my partner, when her dad died last year, and then so we stayed there for like 3 months, basically as long as we could. And leaving her family to come back here to Halifax from Ottawa was really difficult.
Yeah.
And even now, like she'll talk to her mom multiple times on the phone each day.
Yeah.
But it also like trying to live your life and like pursue the things that are important to you and like find that balance between, realizing how incredibly important family is.
Yeah.
But also being torn between, like your new family and your family. And it's just like, there's no right or wrong way to do it or like answer to the feeling. It's more so just like the importance of acknowledging that it's fucking hard. Like
it's hard. Yeah. Like there's no right answer.
Mm-hmm.
If I was home with dad, like trying to help take care of him, I come back burnt out and I miss out on milestones with my stepdaughter who is living her life for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like rest time with my partner, which sounds really selfish, but after having witnessed chronic illness in such full swing, I started prioritizing my rest just as much as going home. And it was obviously like a full calendar for some years.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it increases your awareness that you have to take care of yourself.
And
you can't sacrifice that for anybody or anything.
It's annoying when like people say like, like your dad would want you to be living your best life too, and like it can feel a bit cliche to say that, and at the same time it's also true.
Yeah.
I feel like we haven't even mentioned your father's name was Cyril McPhee. His name was Cyril McPhee. His name was Cyril McPhee.
Are we doing a seance? Oh, right. That's okay.
His name was Robert Paulson.
Waiting for the light to flicker.
Yeah. That would be wild. That would be a whole other podcast.
Yeah, come on, Dad.
And
we brought him in.
Cyril.
We have a mic. He knows how to work a mic.
Bring out the Ouija board.
And you had mentioned that he was a musician.
Yeah.
I would love to dive into just a little bit of like for our listeners, like just tell us a little bit about who he was as a musician. He wasn't just some dude just like playing a song or two here and there as a hobby. Like he was a legendary community. Tell us a little bit about his career as a musician, like what he meant to like the Nova Scotian music industry.
That's such a cool thing, and that's also why I'm writing a book about him. I know I mentioned that. It's called Songbird, because his life was just as important as his death. He left home at 16 from Cape Breton, which is like that's a hard thing. He just left and moved to Halifax. And he became a draftsman for a little bit. He worked for an engineering company, was going to be really successful and live that white picket fence life that his, came from a pretty poor family in Cape Breton. He was going to give his family a completely different life. And music was very challenging. The arts aren't super well respected, especially in the time that he was trying to do them. And he just put it all aside and became a musician anyway. So he started in the 70s with a band called Notework, and they toured around a fair bit. They were on breakfast television many, many, many times. And they opened, then he switched to playing with some of the folks from Notework in a new band called Breakin' Tradition. They were nominated for an ECMA back in the early 90s.
East Coast Music Award, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they released a couple of albums under that name, opened for John Prine in New York in the 90s.
That's fucking wild.
That's huge.
Super cool. I have a photo of it at home. And then he went solo, and that's what he was doing up until I turned about 7 or 8. And we always argued. We argued pretty hard, like a classic father-daughter relationship. He tried 11 instruments with me, and we would argue over each one until finally one day I was singing, and he's like, "Hey, you're not bad at that." So we decided that I would sing with him on stage. We started with like 1 or 2 songs, and then eventually we had a full set list. By the time I was 11, I was performing full time with him on stage. We did Celtic Colors. He was I don't remember the exact term for it, but like the master of ceremonies for Celtic Colors a few years running. Partnered with folks like Buddy McDonald's, worked the Rankin family, were like good friends of his back in the 90s. Jimmy Rankin actually drew the art for one of the Breakin' Tradition early albums. So yeah, within the Cape Breton music scene, like certainly not the biggest name, but the thing that I heard the most about after he died, here I go again, sorry about this. He would walk into a room and made everybody feel so loved. I got like hundreds of messages and phone calls, and they called it the Cyril Effect. And it was so cool to hear how many people remembered him, even if it was just one encounter. And when he passed, there were a few folks that came to the celebration of life. We opted to not have a funeral. But a few folks that came to the celebration of life that had just gone to see him at a gig in the early 2000s, and he started chatting with them after the gig. And they've been at every family birthday, wedding, funeral for the last 12 plus years, and we would stay with them and we'd go on the road together. Like he made friends with everybody. And there are a lot of things about my dad that I found hard to navigate. He wasn't the easiest person to get to know as a child. But I like to think that I carry the same effect as him, and that's where I got it from. Yeah, he was a special guy.
How did music play into, if at all, his journey through navigating Lewy Body Dementia? Like, was he able to play for a period of time? Was it a part of like his, whether or not he even like saw it this way, like a part of his alternative therapy?
Yeah, when he got sick, he got diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2018, and then the pandemic hit in 2020. And I've said this more times than I can count now, but like I think it was a bit of a grace note for him that he didn't have to formally exit the music scene. The pandemic hit and live music became not a thing for some years, and so he just never re-entered. He just left music really quietly. But one of his things he would do at home, and the neurologist had kind of prescribed this, was he had a little pedal bike, because you have to keep whatever you don't use, you lose. With Parkinson's especially, he would pedal. You had your hands on one part and your feet on the other, and so he would pedal his bike and he would sing his songs. I have a few videos of him doing that at home, and it's really wholesome for somebody who can't remember how to make coffee or change his guitar strings. You'd put his music on and he could remember every word. It was pretty cool.
There's something so crazy about, like, I was having this thought yesterday about music, and that this is the only thing that can make me do this. Like, tangential to this, like, you guys know that, like I'm not a very emotional person.
Oh shit.
Taylor hasn't cried once.
So like
That's
like
an understatement.
grasping, like, so when I can grasp like a feeling of an emotion, it's like I'm like, oh wow, that's super interesting. And I had this thought yesterday because I was listening to a song by Broken Social Scene that was like, just meant a lot to me when I was like 20, when I was going through like a old adolescent me to like adult me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, whoa, I'm 20. I'm like 20 in this moment.
It's called nostalgia.
I feel exactly. No, it wasn't like a pining for the
No,
past.
it's nostalgia.
It was like,
you don't understand emotion. It's nostalgia.
I was like, I was like physically,
this.
I was like, I was there. I was like, oh, I remember the exact like feeling of being in this moment in time where I had no responsibilities and like the world ahead of me and all these things and whatever. And I was like, whoa, what a crazy sensation, because like my life is so different now. That it just blew me away that I was like,
music can
just
really,
for that moment.
Yeah, like music can touch. We know that it hits parts of our brains that we can't consciously reach. And so music therapy is used in so many aspects now, but especially in patients with memory loss. Yeah,
like the ability to like access this.
Yeah.
The way that music, because I know that I'm not unique in that experience. Like I know that's a commonly shared experience with people with music. So like for people with dementia, to use something like music to be able to like access things that are slipping away.
Yeah.
Is incredible.
Instant recall.
Yeah.
Haley, I wanted to ask you, when at Maddie's dad's celebration of life, she said a few words, and the biggest thing that she said, and I'm definitely going to butcher this, I'll just paraphrase it, was basically that she didn't want people to just come up to her and tell her that they were sorry.
Yeah.
She wanted to hear stories. And I'm curious, like, were there any stories that you heard about your dad after that you were like, oh,
so that I can't repeat online? Yeah. I want to say too, like, we joked that this podcast might not be full of laughs. He was just the most hilarious prankster that anyone's ever met. And so
give me a good prank.
I'll give you a good one. And like, people don't take inspiration from this because it's really mean, but
I'm gonna.
His roommate back in the day when he lived in Halifax was notorious for like just eating canned food.
Oh.
And they got into like this little prank war at some point or another, and Dad went home and ripped all the labels off the cans. So this guy for months on end was just like
mystery cans.
Trying to open a can of soup and he'd find chickpeas, you know, like that was the kind of shit.
That's what you get for eating canned food, man. I mean, like,
that's good.
That wasn't Cyril 1, that was Cyril 2.
That was Cyril 2. Yeah, he did have an alter ego for sure. No, just like some really beautiful things. I wasn't expecting to do it, but we used to sing a really traditional Irish song at the end of every set that we did called The Parting Glass. I can't say the words out loud because I'll cry. Brian, you and I are like tying for who's cried most during this. Yeah, it's called The Parting Glass, and it's just like a traditional farewell closing of the night song. And I sang it a cappella on stage with 2 people.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was didn't cry. It was a hard one. But afterwards I had a lot of people come up and just talk about like the feeling of being in the crowd, listening to him play music. And he did have some friends that traveled in from Ontario that grew up with him down the road, and he was the only kid in the neighborhood with a bike. And they all still remember and talked about with the same amount of envy as a kid trying to get a turn on that bike in the neighborhood.
How important is it for you to like keep hearing stories like that?
Super important, but I also think it's really important to talk about what happened to him, because his story is, like you said, it's not a unique experience. And I think the level of confusion and how turned around all the information got and how much was missed, it's so important for people to hear how it changed him, because I think there's so much like confusion to begin with in death and loss and chronic illness and palliative care, that like the parts of him that made him the people so many folks loved are the parts of him that kind of still stuck around until the end in moments of lucidity. And so, yeah, like I want to hear the stories, but I also want to be able to talk about him in ways that I couldn't when he was dying.
What
can you like in saying that, like what are those, are there other things that you're thinking about when you say that like you haven't said to us yet?
Yeah, like I think about, you know, the small moments that my mom maybe has forgotten because she was so in it for the 4 years, but like the fact that the man who used to carry 200 pounds of gear into a stage every night and set it all up, and it's these complex soundboards, and he was a solo musician. He would set up his harmony pedal and he would tune his guitar and then remember, you know, 40 odd songs with lyrics over the course of a night. Couldn't remember how to get his foot up a step. His whole body would freeze. And so my mom, being a little bit artistic, painted patterns on the ledges of our stairs that are still there so he could visually distinguish when he was supposed to move his foot up and know when he was standing on them. And with things like sundowning, if anybody out there has experienced living in and around someone with Lewy Body Dementia, you hear about sundowning and you hear about blood pressure issues, but what that looks like in real time is somebody having a blood pressure that will bottom out when they stand up in a patient who can't stop pacing. And so he would stand up and collapse and stand up and collapse on repeat for months. And so those are the things that I'm like, it's one thing to talk about it, and it's another to experience it and feel so alone in that caretaker role.
What would you say is the biggest thing that the death of your father has taken away from you?
Oh, God, good question, Jer. I think probably the ability to have maybe like a better living relationship than what we did when he was lucid. And I am totally at peace with that. I've forgiven a lot of the ways that we couldn't get close when he was alive. And I understand, as a grown-up person with a frontal lobe that's fully online, why he couldn't do those things. But being, 33, going on 34 now, I know that I could have navigated that relationship better and differently, and probably found ways to have conversations with him that we couldn't have had. And as much as I can process those things by myself or talk about them with a therapist or my partner, it's not the same as sitting in front of him and being able to share with him all of the things that I've learned and all of the ways that he impacted me for better or for worse.
What would you say is the biggest thing that it's given you?
Gratitude for time. That's probably the cheesiest answer that everyone gives. But I know, just like anybody else, that I have just as good of a shot as succumbing to the same thing. Lewy body isn't genetic, but Alzheimer's is, and dementia is, and there seems to be a huge prevalence of it. And so I spend a lot of time now meditating and being really intentionally present with my time and my people. And in a way that's not avoidant, I hope. I just don't have time for things that don't really matter, that aren't surface level. And having faced my own chronic illness, that was already true, but like tenfold now, you know? I just want to do the things and see the things and be with people and experience peace and not be afraid to have these conversations. I think they're so important because everyone experiences grief, and people experience grief more than we talk about it.
I think, out of the last 10 years of doing this, and countless conversations we've had around the topic of grief, I can safely say that this is probably one of the most profound conversations we've had around it.
Thanks, buddy.
So, thank you for being, just like so fucking incredibly strong and willing to come in here and share something that is still very, like, it's not like this happened 10 years ago. Like this is fresh. And just the way that you've been able to navigate us through this journey that you've been on, and also somehow just like seamlessly, beautifully remembering your father, who I've never had a chance to meet him, but like
he would have loved you, and he probably would have made a joke that would have made you go, "What the fuck, Cyril?" He
really does sound like he sounds like a really wonderful human, and I'm just really grateful for you and for your willingness to come on here and talk to us about this, because I think you're right. I think this is we're a death phobic society. We don't like to face it. We don't like to think about it. And this episode, for anybody who listens to it, is just a variation of training wheels to like prep themselves for the time where it comes for them to have to walk in those shoes. So
yeah, grief is like the great equalizer, and I encourage everybody to just start talking about it and start asking your people the hard questions. It also adds to joy. Like there's, I think it's Francis Weller wrote a book called The Edge of Sorrow, maybe The Wild Edge of Sorrow, and he says, like, you hold grief in one hand and gratitude in the other and be stretched wide by them. And that has carried me through the last, I don't know how many years, of remembering that you can't feel the grief in a certain depth unless you're also feeling the gratitude in equal measure.
I just want to say, fuck you, because I was literally just doing a 10th anniversary post of the top 10 tearjerker moments from the podcast. I think, and now I'm gonna have to go fucking edit it and add this in.
Yeah,
which is
technically
funny,
it didn't make the time count.
Drop before this comes out. It'll be you have to tune in for it. I hope it's okay, but I know that you said that you can't, but I would like to close this out by just reading this one little piece of parting words. So for Cyril, so Phil.
Good luck.
Give it to Taylor.
You want me to do it?
The lyrics of the song go, so Phil, to me the parting glass, good night and joy be with you all.
So fill to me the parting glass and drink a health whate'er befalls, then gently rise and softly call good night and joy be to you all. Again, together. His name was Cyril McPhee. All right, there we go. We got that out. Thank you, Haley. Honestly, this has been a really beautiful conversation, and I'm so glad that this has been a part of my day.
Yeah, thank you guys for holding such gorgeous space for a conversation like this. It's what you've been doing for the last 10 years. And for what it's worth, Dad listened to the first episode and he loved it.
Sweet. I'm glad your dad got to hear about the time I got to.
I apologize that I didn't cry, guys. I
think we did it for you.
I'll say that as we were like, I feel like the thing that I take most from this is like sitting across from you and like seeing my daughter in you.
Yeah.
And like,
oh, that's a cool perspective.
And like
too.
thinking about like all the things
the
that
best
I
prank
can
you
do.
can pull since you can remember.
Like all the things that I can do as like a father to like open up lines of communication and like sharing and like, and all the things that I can do to like, so that my daughter might like sit in a chair one day and like think about these things and like understand these things and like feel that I was, like a person to her as like your father was to her. And
it's astounding that you could say that without being brought to tears. You are an absolute fucking psychopath. An absolute psychopath.
I feel it profoundly. There's just no water in my eyes.